I would like to call the April meeting of the Kansas State Board of Education to order and welcome you all to our meeting today. John Bacon is absent, so our board will be a 9-member board today. I would like to begin our meeting by reading the mission statement of the State Board of Education. It is to prepare Kansas students for lifelong success through rigorous quality academic instruction, career training, and character development according to each student's gifts and talents. And I would ask you now to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we move on to the approval of the agenda, I would like to read a statement to the educators of Kansas. While the simplicity of thank you is powerful, this school year just 2 words are not enough. The State Board of Education is extremely proud to commend Kansas educators, administrators, and students for their many achievements and for surpassing expectations. This year, educators in Kansas are working especially hard to implement a host of new initiatives. The board knows that educators work tirelessly toward the goal of preparing students for better futures. In Kansas, that task is directed by more rigorous standards, coursework, and assessments, as well as the vision of better preparing students for college and careers. Educators recognize what it takes to provide quality education and have supported efforts to address any challenges that arise. It is through this can-do spirit that board members remain confident in what the future holds for public education in Kansas. National Teacher Day is right around the corner on May 6th. This is a perfect time to acknowledge the contributions educators make, not only in their classrooms, but in their communities as well. There is much to be grateful for in Kansas. And again, I want to say thank you to our teachers, administrators, and students for doing everything they can to promote quality teaching and learning in our state. We will move on to the approval of our agenda. I don't believe there are any changes that we need to make you aware of, so do I hear a motion to approve our agenda? Moved by Carolyn Campbell and seconded by Dina Horst. All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Motion carried 9-0. Next, we need to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Moved by Ken Willard, seconded by Kathy Bush. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, the minutes are approved. So we will move forward with our agenda with our commissioner's report.
Well, good morning. There's not a lack of information to talk about during Commissioner's Report, so we'll start with one of the most important, though, and I'd like to introduce Wendy Fritz. Wendy is our new Human Resources Director, and Wendy's right here, standing there, not trying to make it to the podium, it looks like, but you don't have to. You certainly don't have to speak at all. But Wendy has been with us. This is the beginning of her 3rd week, so she's completed 2 full weeks. She came to us after 12 years with the Kansas Corporation Commission, where she held a very similar job. So she's used to working with a body such as this, staff about the same size, knows state HR and policies and procedures very well. So we were thrilled that she was interested in the State Department of Education, and so glad to have her on board. Wendy, anything you'd like to say? If so,
I think you covered it. Like Diane said, I've started my 3rd week. I've met with most of leadership. I've had a very warm welcome, learning a lot about education, and very excited about the opportunity.
Has a few kids in the education system, keeping up with them.
I have a senior at Washburn Rural High School, and then twin boys at Indian Hills Elementary. So yeah.
All right. So welcome aboard, Wendy. You'll see these 10 members, and
I look forward to
many of them work with you on some issues as well. So
sounds great.
Thank you, Wendy, and welcome.
Thanks.
In your board packet, I had mentioned that I wanted to visit about a capacity review that the State Department of Education will undergo here soon. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that and hand you some information regarding that capacity review. So I'll wait until those make it around to all the board members, and I think we do have some extras for the audience if you would like one. In a Friday letter about a month ago, I had written that Kansas had been approached by CCSSO and a group called the U.S. Education Delivery Institute, or EDI, to participate in a capacity review as to how the implementation of Common Core standards was going across the state. 4 other states have already done this. On the handout that you just received, the front page gives a little bit of a summary of what will happen. But in the beginning, the Helmsley Charitable Trust funded, along with CCSSO, 4 states to undergo a capacity review as to how across their state the higher standards, whether they're called Common Core in another state or Kansas College and Career Ready standards here, how that implementation was going. The 4 states that participated in that reported tremendous value from that capacity review. It helped them analyze what they were doing, how the field was interacting with that, and exactly what was happening and any gaps in between. So they made it available to a few additional states with a different group funding it, still CCSSO leading it and EDI doing the work of it, but this time funded by the GE Foundation, helping to fund that. So they offered it to Kansas and a few other states. Brad and I and staff, we talked about why would we want to do this, why would we not want to do this, and decided in the end that it was best for us to do this review. It is a bit of a risk to do this review, and as you look through the packet in your time, I won't ask you to do that today, but it's a 3-day process. Staff from EDI comes in, they interview stakeholders across the state, they interview people within the department as to our own perceptions as to how we've implemented higher standards across the state. And in Kansas, that's been going on since late 2010 and in earnest from 2011 and on. Then they give a report that is a very honest report in how we're doing. And if you look on the second page of your handout, you'll see a sample report in terms of the results at the top and then the recommendations at the bottom. So there will be 4 areas that the capacity review will look at. Our systems alignment and systems change, how we're doing on educator supports, on student supports, and finally, in the 4th area, communication and engagement. So in that sample result that you see at the top of the page with the reds and the greens and the yellows, that's in this particular case, and this is just a sample, in this particular state, anything that's red means that they weren't doing quite as well as what we would expect. And so that's why I say it's a bit of a risk for a state department, an agency, to do this, because we may end up with a report that shows all red. And we've been doing this now for 3 years, 3 full years. We believe as an agency that we provided the supports, the technical assistance, summer academies, working with service centers to get the word out. We believe we've done a good job, but this self-reflection and an outside group looking at it for us, we think will be very beneficial. So if you look at the bottom of that second page, this would be a sample of the recommendations. In this case, one of them was you need to prioritize professional development for principals, administrators as part of the plan. And then as you look back into the rest of your handout, and you come to the page that says State Education Agency Common Core Implementation Progress and Capacity Rubric, wanting to know exactly what we're getting into, what those questions will be, the rubric is actually attached. So we know exactly when EDI comes in what they're going to be asking, the stakeholders and our agency. We have to rate ourselves, and we rate ourselves from weak, strong, or evidence to look for. So you can see in that first area of aspiration, that's one of the rubrics. From a weak implementation to the state has not established a clear vision for Common Core state standards, all the way to strong, that the state has established a clear vision, we've articulated it, and we've done well in helping students accomplish that. So all of these pages that are at the back, the rubrics, match the areas in that top chart that you saw with the colors. So we have agreed to this. It is not costing the state anything. It is the in-kind contributions will come from CCSSO and the GE Foundation. The U.S. Education Delivery Institute is an institute that is funded with federal money. The head person in that agency, or the one that will probably be working with our state, is a lady by the name of Kathy Cox. And Kathy Cox is the previous commissioner in Georgia. She was the one that won the contest of Who's Smarter Than a Fifth Grader. You may have remembered that when Alexa was here, or some of you who remember her talking about that. So the U.S. Education Delivery Institute, they've worked with state departments. They know state departments. They know what happens when you put a new initiative in a state and how that works with stakeholders. We believe this will help us tremendously as we continue to move forward with our own staff. I know in South Dakota where they did this, they actually found some tremendous gaps in their own staffing as to how that particular education agency was staffed in order to help the field. So I think it will, for us, highlight where we've been successful. It is going to put a spotlight on the areas where we need to do more work. I think it will help us with any legislative attempt that comes up again in terms of how's implementation going, how do you know? Well, we'll know more after this capacity review. So that, we don't have a timeline scheduled for when they're going to be in. We're still working with their group to get that done, but it will involve all of us here who have had anything to do with implementation of the Kansas College and Career Ready standards. I think it will involve all of you at some point doing a self-assessment as well, because you're a stakeholder, and then we'll be out in the field. We don't know if we'll get it done out in the field before school ends, so it might end up starting in the fall when school starts, since we're in March or in April already. So questions about the capacity review? Comments?
Ken Willard.
Dr. DeBacker, you mentioned early in your comments that there were some risks. Can you identify what they are?
I think for the risk for us as an agency
Right.
is that we get a report back that shows all red.
Oh, okay.
So, the risk is that if we get a report back that says you guys have not hit the mark on any of these areas, there's 4 major categories and then there's several sections within those, that's the risk that we take as an agency. But we need to know where our gaps are, just as in this state, the example that they showed here, that very clearly shows you where you should be putting your efforts, your focus. In our case, if it has to do with educator supports, we have some Title IIA money that we spend for educators in order for professional development, so redirect those. Those are the risks I was talking about.
And one more, if I may. Who are the 4 states who've already been through this?
North Dakota, South Dakota. Brad, can you remember the other 2? I'll get those to you.
Okay.
Both of the Dakotas and believe Colorado, but I'll check. I'll have those for you before.
How were they selected?
They were selected by CCSSO offering it to states. So I have not asked CCSSO how they made that determination. My guess is that part of it has to do with if you have a really small state education agency and they know that you are, in terms of staff, kind of at your limit.
Capacity challenge.
Capacity challenge. I will find out who the other 4 are and who the 4 who are being invited in addition to us.
Okay, thank you.
Before or right after lunch.
Sally Cobble.
Well, I appreciate who is actually coming also because they understand that all states are governed differently. And so, sometimes we don't come out very good because we're local control. But these people coming out are in tune to that, right?
Yes, and you had the opportunity to meet Ms.
really
Cox last year at the ECS meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Janet Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. They have completed the 4 states, is that correct? Have you visited with any of those states to see if they concurred or they felt this was a good report? Or
Had a very good and long discussion with the South Dakota commissioner or secretary, and she said it was very much worth their time. They did concur with the findings as to where they had red areas. They faced a legislative challenge as well as similar to what Kansas has faced with the Common Core standards. And Commissioner Shop is her name. She said that helped her tremendously during the legislative session, because if a legislator said, well, we know that this isn't working or in a particular area, she could pull out the report and say, on our capacity review, according to what educators say, what you're saying is not true, or what you're saying is true and we're working on it.
Okay, great. Then my second question is, how long after the review is finished, complete, how long before you would get the report?
Very quickly. It sounds like you'll get the report within a few weeks, and then EDI is there for 6 months after to help you with implementation.
Okay. Thank you.
So they don't just come in, give you a report, and then leave. They stay with you.
Dina Horst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Several of my questions have already been answered, but just a comment that it sounds like from the answers that it's a worthwhile process for us to be involved in, and I look forward to seeing the results.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? Well, I would just second the opinion that this could be a very worthwhile endeavor, and I think the value of having an objective opinion is always critical to moving forward with a new initiative. So thank you for taking that on. I would like to ask board members if all of your speaking order applications are working. It helps me if you use those, because trying to look here and then look around to see who is wanting to speak is kind of problematic sometimes. So if you will use those, it would help me a lot. Jim McNeese.
Just testing the system.
Oh, yours works. Most of them I saw at the first of the meeting, but I thought if anybody was having trouble, you could let me know, and then I could keep my eye out for you. Okay.
Chairman, I have one more item that was not included in the packet, but included as a follow-up to last month's meeting. And this will be another quick review of something and give you time to look at it, and then we can discuss it further down the road. But last month, when the Supreme Court decision was released, and it was mentioned the Rose standards, several of you said we'd like more information on that. I sent information to you in a Friday letter, and knowing that you probably wanted a little bit more, and also staff being pretty aggressive on this, in Brad's division, they took the Rose standards that are listed along the left-hand column, and then they took initiatives that we have going in the state and aligned those with the Rose standards. So I'll take you through the first one or two, and you'll kind of see the pattern. The first Rose standards is that there must be sufficient oral and written communication skills to enable students to function in a complex and rapidly changing civilization. So how is the work of the State Department of Ed and other groups aligning with that? So we took three of our top areas, the Kansas College and Career Ready employability skills, or the definition that you have, the 21st century accreditation model that we're looking at of the 5 R's, and then finally in the right-hand column, MTSS. So we took what we believe out of each of those that aligns directly with the Rose standards. So in your college and career ready definition, how does that relate to that first Rose standard about oral and written communication? Well, we talk very clearly in our definition that kids or students must have employability skills through a subset of basic skills. Basic skills encompass reading, writing, listening, speaking, and performing math computations. As you walk across that first Rose standards to the 21st century accreditation model that we'll be discussing in more detail next month, the relevance rubric that we're using definitely applies there. And as you look at the MTSS alignment, what's happening in that in terms of progress monitoring of students' achievement in reading and math. And so each Rose standard is listed along the left-hand side there where we think it corresponds. This is not a done document. If you can see it on the second and third pages a little clearer, but it's very clearly says draft. This is a document that we happened to have the opportunity to run past a few administrators who came in last week to visit with Brad and I. And you could easily add several more columns here. We could add a column that talks about the board's mission. So your board mission could be a column and how that aligns with each. You could add a column of graduation requirements and how graduation requirements tie back to the Rose standards. In the districts that visited with us last week, they immediately picked it up and they said, one of them said, we're going to add a column that's our own district mission and goals and how that aligns. So it's just a way to look at the Rose standards because each of you, I think, or some of you were questioning whether or not even our graduation requirements align to these Rose standards. How did your college and career ready definition align to that? We believe they do align. We had questions from the field as well. So this is just a way to get people thinking about the Rose standards, what they're doing within their districts, and how they do align. So again, a very quick review of this, but it, I think, should make all of us feel a little bit more at ease that what the Kansas Supreme Court used to make a determination is still relevant and does align with the work that you put in place over the past several years. Questions? Comments?
Jim McNeese.
This is not a test. And this is maybe we're not prepared for this question, or maybe it's yet down the road. I don't know the answer to it. But I've heard some criticism of the Rose standards that there's things that are left out. How do we respond to that, based on the kind of organizational design we have here in this rubric?
This actually is how we've responded to that, and specifically we've had that same question with math and reading. And so if you look at the last Rose standard, it's not the last one actually. If you look at the one, I've lost it myself here. But they talk about, it's number 6. Sufficient trainer preparation for advanced training in either academic or vocational fields to enable each child to choose and pursue their life's work intelligently. We believe that that's all about academic standards. So when you talk about every set of standards that you all approve in, from the core standards of the math, science, English, social studies, and science, to the non-assessed standards, they all fall in here. So that's how we're responding to it, Jim. Weak, right or wrong, don't know, but that's how we're doing this at this point. And we believe that this document will continue to be revised and worked on and columns added and make it district specific. Even in mine, and I haven't even reviewed it with Brad this morning yet, I have about 7 different notes written on here of other things that connect. As every time I read this, I think of another connection.
Other questions? Then we will move on. Do we have any
You do have one more.
speakers? We do. Okay. Oh, sorry. Ken Willard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a question, but as I've had read the Rose standards and tried to consider how they apply, it seems to me that they're laudable goals, but whether by design or not, they don't seem to be easily measured. And maybe that's not a bad thing, but that's just an observation that all of them are really outcomes after we're done. So measuring them up to that point seems to be the challenge. And so maybe that's what we have to figure out. And I think that's what we try to do in our standards. But I would like a little better understanding of how that process works.
Thank you. Dina Horst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought it might also be, I don't know how many of my colleagues know that there was kind of I don't know whether to call it a bifurcation of the standards that were already in statute. The Rose standards were basically already in statute. So many of the things we'd been doing kind of led to that. So that may be part of the reason we can connect some areas already. But it did leave out some of the components that were in that statute when they took away that statute and replaced it solely with the Rose standards. So that may be somewhat what Mr. McNeese is referencing, that some areas were left out. But hopefully we will somehow see those as important and at least in this agency and on this board, and not ignore the things that used to be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it is now 10:30. We're right on schedule. That's good to know. It's time for our Citizens Open Forum. I now declare the Citizens Open Forum of the Kansas State Board of Education meeting open at 10:30 a.m. The State Board provides the opportunity for citizens to share views about topics of interest or issues currently being considered by the State Board. The State Board asks that speakers identify themselves by name and the name of the group they represent, if applicable. The State Board also asks that each speaker focus their remarks on issues or topics. Personal attacks will not be tolerated. Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. Any board questions will be for clarification. Our first speaker is Tammy Bartles.
Good morning. I missed you all last month when I was in D.C. I'm Tammy Bartles. I'm the... Can you push your mic just that button right there? Oh, now you turned it off. Nick got it now.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm Tammy Bartles. I am the president of Kansas PTA, and I am here. Peggy's passing around some information for you. PTA has been working closely with the department for several months now on rewriting the standards for teacher education licensure. We have provided parent volunteers to serve on the various committees. I myself have served on the committee that recently redid the standards for special education, and we've been asked again to provide parent volunteers for some of the other standards that were not done in the first couple go-arounds, and we are glad to do that. Since we are being so involved in helping with this, I wanted to share with you PTA's position on teacher quality and on strengthening support for public school teachers. As you're all aware, we had a very disappointing weekend with the legislature this weekend, and since we can't address everything, we wanted to express our support for quality teachers in classrooms. The first resolution is on teacher quality, and it states, whereas standards regarding teacher education, licensing, hiring, and professional development make an important difference in the qualifications and capacities that teachers bring to their work and thus contribute to enhancing quality and equality in public education, PTA has resolved a few things, but I want to focus on the PTA and its constituent organizations support high standards for teacher preparation, licensing, hiring, and professional development for educators, particularly for beginning teachers, to promote the achievement of all students. This basically says that we don't agree with the legislature's decision to loosen the requirements for teacher education, for teacher licensure, and so I wanted to share that with you as our official position. I also wanted to share with you our resolution on strengthening support of public school teachers. Basically, whereas a commitment to quality education requires involvement with and support of educators, parents, students, and the general public, PTA has resolved to become increasingly involved in activities that strengthen respect and support for the teaching profession, to support efforts to upgrade the quality of public school teachers, thereby improving the image and stature of the profession, and to encourage appropriate funding authorities to establish salaries commensurate with professional preparation and the dedication necessary for effective teaching. So first, I wanted to thank you all for all of your efforts in making sure that every Kansas classroom had a quality teacher. We, as parents, and some of you are parents, we give teachers our babies for 8 hours every day, and we appreciate knowing that they are quality people who are going to take just as good care of them as we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tom Krebs.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the State Board. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I want to start out by thanking so many of you who were at the State House over the last week. It certainly was a challenging time. but I can say safely that over the last 10 days, I've never seen so many educators at the State House. From the day KSB had our legislative day to your members to KNEA being there, lots of people got certainly engaged in the political process this past week. So I'm here today to talk about KSB's vision for improving educational outcomes in Kansas, and it rests on 3 principles. I'm passing around testimony that Mark gave last year talking about innovative districts, and I'm mainly doing it so you can see a little more detail about our program, First in Education the Kansas Way. But our program is based on 3 distinct principles: providing suitable education finance, strengthening local leadership, and raising standards for students, educators, and schools. KSB supports the concept of innovative districts because we see it as a way to allow districts to set higher standards for preparing students for successful lives in exchange for freedom to innovate. This should allow districts to experiment with different approaches to student learning while being accountable for the results of that experimentation. KSB supported the original bill creating innovative districts, not because the State Board of Education had been unresponsive in the past, but because only the legislature can provide the exceptions to state statutes. We have always stressed our belief this legislation may need modifications as it is implemented. We would urge the State Board to allow the process for approving the initial innovative districts to move forward, as McPherson and Concordia are excellent choices to provide outstanding leadership. Once the Board of Innovative Districts is in place and begins operating, the State Board, the legislature, and all other members of the education community can begin to determine whether changes should be made to resolve constitutional questions or make other changes to improve the system. KSB believes we must move with urgency to prepare more students to be successful in post-secondary education and their careers. We believe the Innovative District Act is one way to develop a new, more effective way to meet this challenge under the elected local school leaders. That completes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Cheryl Simmel.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. My name is Cheryl Simmel. I'm Executive Director for United School Administrators of Kansas and the Kansas School Superintendents Association, and that's a mouthful on a Tuesday morning. But I appreciate the opportunity to offer some remarks this morning, specifically related to the Coalition of Innovative Schools. And I stand here before you because we've received a number of questions over the past couple of months about where our association is at and why we've supported the innovative school districts, and I wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you. One is that when the innovation school district bill first came forward, we liked the idea of focusing on what was happening in schools. We also linked that very closely to a conversation about resources for schools, that sometimes when you're changing a system or when you're changing a process, that there are resources that are necessary to help move us forward. And we think that as we continue to have this conversation on what resources are necessary, not only from a fiscal standpoint, but from a human resource standpoint, and we talk about adequacy as we talk about the Rose Standards, that there's a very appropriate place for talking about what it means to be an innovative district and to really think outside the box and foster collaboration in our schools. I will say to you that the selection of McPherson and Concordia were very good things in our minds. Both school districts have been very actively engaged in our association, have been powerful advocates for public education in Kansas, have worked very closely with state board members, legislators, people in the field. Our goal is to foster an atmosphere of collaboration among all parties and to really address the issue of what can we do that moves student learning forward in Kansas. A couple of thoughts for you on the Coalition of Innovative Schools. Our general philosophy is that one, we really want this to focus on excellence in education for all students. Pre-kindergarten, kindergarten through 12, what we do in post-secondary education. There was a lot of conversation about how we address 19-year-olds over the last couple of days of the session. Where do they fit into the system? We think this provides an opportunity for that conversation. One, we want to focus on bold leadership. how do we move forward with bold leadership, collaboration, and really the identification of very viable opportunities for success and innovation in our school districts. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I think that you'll hear some very compelling presentations today by both Randy and Bev, and we're committed to working with you, not against you. We want to do this in collaboration. We're most successful when we're all working together. Thank you.
Thank you. The State Board Citizen Open Forum is closed at 10:39 a.m. We would like to thank our speakers for sharing their views with the board. The State Board will determine if any issues should be addressed as an agenda item at future meetings. And with that, we're a little ahead of schedule, which is good. So I will let our commissioner introduce our next presenters.
I'm assuming that Randy and Bev, you don't mind going a little early? We need the time, so yeah. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Randy Watson and Dr. Bev Bornever, superintendents of the McPherson District and the Concordia District. As you know from the information in your packet, these two districts were chosen as the first two innovative districts from the governor and the chair of the House and the Senate Education Committees. So they are here today to talk to you about their proposals, to answer questions, and to listen to your discussion about moving forward. So, Randy, it looks like you're starting.
Yeah, I think we'll both.
Okay. Bev and Randy, welcome.
We'll tag team this. Thank you, Commissioner and Madam Chair. We're pleased to be here with you today. Bev and I are excited about this prospect, and it's a daunting challenge in front of us. But before we get started with that, we want to take an opportunity to say publicly thank you to a whole host of people, but maybe some people very specifically. Brad and Scott and his team and Marianne over at KU have been dealing with, as you know, a very challenging transition for our state into a new assessment system. And any transition, it doesn't always go like we would want it to. And their work on behalf of students and faculty and principals and everyone involved has just been tremendous. And their response has always been tremendous. So I want to say publicly thank you to them. There's a lot of, as you know, in the last month, just a lot of long hours and weekend hours and tireless commitment to that. So thank you to Brad and Scott and all the team and Marianne and everyone involved with that. And then, as already has been mentioned, and probably the feeling of how the at least the initial legislative session wrapped up this weekend, I'd like to thank Dale and just the number of hours that he always puts in on your behalf and our behalf, I think has just been multiplied by 100. And so I want to and I don't think he's with us right now. Okay, so I want to say thank you to Dale on behalf of all superintendents and all public school people. We never thank him enough, and I want to say thank you. And so, you know, Bev and I were talking the last couple days, and certainly the turmoil of the assessment season and you know how teachers and principals have reacted to us when things haven't gone right and reacted to you, and then the legislative session really when the Supreme Court issued their ruling, and then the movement, and then the seemingly never-ending movement this weekend. As you know, we were talking yesterday was just a somber day in schools. It really was. And so today we come to you knowing that there are other things on all of our minds. There really are, you know, and yet we think that this is important work, and we want to talk to you about our thoughts and our proposals and kind of moving forward. Over the last 4 years, I've had the opportunity to stand before you twice and many of you were here, some of you were not during that period, and asked for your support for McPherson school districts in a waiver of No Child Left Behind. And you supported that, and we have been working on that tirelessly during that process. And I know he probably gets tired of me saying this, but I remember vividly, Ken is always invited to a Christmas luncheon in our building, and we talk about it. And the year before we ever started this, we kind of outlined what we thought we were going to do. And he said, I think that sounds good. And, you know, he was very pleasant and nice, as he always is. And the next year, when we were breaking bread again right before Christmas, and we described that we were actually doing it, he says, I never thought you would really do it. You know, we talk a lot about things, and I never thought that we would really do it. And that's kind of the spirit and why we're here today, is that we really want to do this. We think it has some opportunities for students and some challenges along the way. We're looking at really some simple goals. They're ambitious, but they're simple. How do we drive student success into adulthood? To have adults that are successful in life. Now that's a simple process, and we're all after that. How do we do it? How do we do it? And so I guess the outcome measures are equally as ambitious, but maybe at a high level in terms of the details. That is, we have to have a high graduation rate. If a student doesn't graduate high school today, Jana, I tell the story a lot about my dad in Southeast Kansas. But the truth is that the era that my dad grew up in, and my dad not having a college education or any certificate, didn't hamper his ability to do very well on the Missouri Pacific Railroad. But the opportunities, as we know, and as all of you know, for students that don't graduate high school are so diminished today. And so we have to graduate kids from high school. But I will tell you that most of my 33 years in education, not the last few, but most of my 33 years were dedicated to just that, graduating kids from high school. And as you all know, because you're engaged in this process, it's now, are we graduating them with a future? And that's different than what my dad had to do when he walked across the stage at Field County High School in the early 1950s. So graduation rates have got to be high, and then we have to measure the level of success that our students have in getting certificates, technical school education, military training, and some kind of baccalaureate, master's, some kind of college degree. The reason for that is, as we said here, the predictions for the Georgetown Institute, as you know, say the class of 2018, which are in our schools right now, that Kansas will need just short of 70% of those graduates to fill jobs that require post-secondary training. So can't just graduate them. We have to graduate them with the hope for the future. With that, we believe that there's much more to that success than lies in how we've approached it historically with just a reading and math score. And that's where the innovation maybe comes in. How do we get this? At the most challenging time in our country, in the state of Kansas where poverty is growing, you know, many of you know that I have the greatest admiration for Cindy Lane at Kansas City, Kansas, and the work that she does every day and the work that their staff does every day. As we face more poverty and more challenges, how do we get to this higher level? And none of us have the answer. We don't, or we would have all done it. But we have some parts of the answer, and we're all working together for that. So we ask you today, as we talk about our applications, we want to focus on students. I've talked to you many times about all of our jobs get mired in oftentimes talking about what adults need. And adults need a lot of things in order to take care of students. But we want to focus on students, and we want to focus on collaboration. This bill is controversial. There's no doubt about it. There are a lot of people extremely worried about what this bill may do. We are extremely excited about what it may do. And they're both right. Both of those are right because the bill is. But we want to focus on students and collaboration, not waiving rules or regulations for the sake of just doing those because we want to do them. Are they focused on student success, and will they possibly yield to greater student outcomes and success? So to accomplish that, we need you. We've always needed you. We certainly need the state board, and we need the state department to work alongside with us. And as you know, if you read this very, some people would say, not very well written bill, and you read it, it's open to interpretation. And one of those, as Bev and I have talked, is that as we go forward, we would love to have, in every meeting that we have, a representative of the state board and a representative of the department, whether that's the commissioner or whoever, Diane, you would decide, to sit down and work with us on what we need to do to improve Kansas schools, just like we always have, just maybe in a little bit different format in how we go about it. 8 school districts have currently applied for innovative status, far less than the 10% originally allowed by law, and if signed by the governor, I think that goes to 20%. Some of those are focused on schools. We see this as an opportunity to try some things together, say that doesn't work, this does work, maybe we can scale that up. You know, maybe we can talk about that and have that work for other schools and agencies. So we're happy to answer today questions about our specific applications. You've had those before you, and I think you know the McPherson kind of path pretty well, many of you. I will say that the future for this, it can be scary. You know, yesterday we met with our staff in Concordia and McPherson. I will tell you they're frightened, you know, about what happened. And I think this bill also lends itself to that. It can be frightening. But I think if we approach it in the right way, one, we have to have a sense of urgency. You know, for me as a superintendent, we often think in terms of 2, 3, 5 years, and then another generation of kids go through. And we need a sense of urgency to do this work together. We need to focus on students, and we need to build trust. And those won't be easy in an era when a lot of people want to tear all those things down. So we ask that you consider approval of our application so that we can start this work together. And Bev and I would stand for questions, and I don't know if Bev wants to say anything too about our specific applications. We didn't address those. We'd be happy, though, to talk about those with you. But we want to talk really more about where we see this going together and how we see that we can improve education.
Well, I won't say a lot because I don't want to repeat. I do agree with what Randy just said, but I will tell you the day we gave our presentations, in my opening, I said, first you need to understand, number one, I believe in public education. I believe in the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education and the processes that we have. So the day we delivered our application across the street, I also handed it to Diane, and I said, I want you to understand. And from the beginning when we submitted it, and I hope that some of that's apparent in our application, we always intended to work with the State Board and the State Department on this. And, you know, Randy mentioned collaboration. In Concordia, Kansas, in our size of a school district, we can't solve all the problems ourselves. The other thing that went into our application was a lot of work with our community. When we did our presentation, I had the city manager, I had the community college president. I had people there that we'd already worked with locally to say, our goal is that all of our kids, 100% of our kids, graduate with either a year of college and or an industry recognized certification. Well, in order to do that, what are the things we need to have in place? And that was how we put our plan together, is how do we accomplish that with our kids? Well, it wasn't done just by our school district. It was done by a lot of people in the community. Then looking broader, because now here I stand with Randy from McPherson, that we may be the beginning of the coalition. I look forward to collaboration. He mentioned maybe Cindy Lane at Kansas City. I looked at, we now do have their the other schools' applications, and it's the first time we've seen them. What I'm excited about is sitting around a table with those superintendents, talking about what works with her 22,000 kids. There are some things there that might apply and that we can adjust or adapt that will work in Concordia, Kansas. We're a little bit isolated, and sometimes we think we have more differences than we have in common. And to be able to collaborate with other superintendents and other ideas is what I most look forward to. And I think out in the field, across the state of Kansas, there are a lot of good ideas. But again, I want to repeat what he said. I think it would be a great opportunity for us to have one of you and somebody from the department to sit with us and help us work through this, because we don't have the answers. We have some of the challenges, and how we address those or resolve it. I know in our case, we'd like to develop some processes. I'll use one example that I have in there, the licensure. And to give an example, that was one of the greatest fears of our teachers. We actually did work, our Teachers Association knew about our application and our ideas before it went in also. And then afterwards, we continue to have conversations about that, because one of their fears is you want to replace all of us with just people off the street or people out. That's absolutely not true. I can't ever envision hiring somebody without credentials to be an elementary teacher. We don't have a shortage. We have lots of highly trained. But here's one example. We have one family and consumer science teacher for grades 7 through 12. By the time her schedule is filled with teaching the beginning and the introductory courses, there's not room in that schedule for her to teach some more advanced courses. One of the things we started was a culinary arts program. I have students next year ready for culinary arts too. We have to either drop something out of the schedule or do some rotation or be creative, because I need a little bit more than one teacher, but I don't know of any licensed teacher that's going to come to Concordia and teach 1 or 2 classes for me. But what we do have locally is a chef with credentials working downtown at a tea house that might be able to help us out for that one period in the day, who's highly trained and qualified to work with culinary students. So that's a local solution to our problem, but are we just going to put that person in the classroom without any mentoring, any training, any background check? No. We need to develop the processes by which we put those people in the classroom. Because the other thing I think I would ask you to keep in mind in this is, some people think it's just going to be this free-for-all, we're going to take the leash off and run. We still answer to a local board of education, and they're elected. And I can tell you they're business owners, and in communities our size, if they make the wrong decisions, there are plenty of people there to let them know about the wrong decisions. And I can assure you that our board, as well as many others, feel 110% accountable for the kids that they work with. And so I think they are going to also help us make sure we walk through this. And are we going to make a few mistakes? Probably. But I think the Innovative Districts also gives us a chance to pilot some things and try some things across the state in different settings and find some solutions that might then be replicated or applied in other districts. So I think I will stop, and if you have questions about our specific applications, I'd be happy to answer those.
I just might comment to your position about the technical CTE teachers, and I'm sure you're aware that we have been concerned about that as well and have started a process to change our licensure requirements in that area.
I should have included that. I was at a meeting when you discussed that here, and I wanted to applaud your efforts to give us some room to work in those areas.
We realize it's a problem for our districts. Ken Willard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to say thank you to Randy and Bev both for coming, because as you know, because of the vagueness and the way the law was written, I cannot read any requirement in there that they come to us. But I think it was a very wise decision to come to us and seek our blessing or approval for them moving ahead. So I guess the first thing I want to do is ask a question of the two presenters. What is it that you would like to see happen here to just move you on let this process move forward? I mean, what's the next step in your mind?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think, one, we would like your approval and your blessing to move forward, and two, we'd like your collaboration with us in moving forward. I think that those are the two things. The Innovative District Bill, I think for Bev and myself, is less about the specifics right now, and it's about where we could go together in the next 5 years in a hurry. You know, the budgets of all of us have been cut, nowhere more so than in the State Department. And allow a small group of school districts the chance to innovate and bring back to you as a board, here are some things we may be able to accelerate the positive change that all of you are after. That's what I would see.
Okay. Well, I thank you for that answer. I, for one, hope that the board will not allow the vagueness of the way the law is written, or the fact that we haven't resolved all the uncertainties about it, to prevent us from blessing this action. We're waiting for an Attorney General's opinion that, in my mind, it probably may not even come. He's under no obligation to respond or to issue an opinion. And so to hang our hat on that as a reason for not blessing this activity seems to me to be just a convenient way to shut it down. And so I would encourage us to support it and issue a statement of support as they move forward, and accept their offer to bring a state board member and a person from the department into their regular meetings, and work together with them in the collaboration that they requested, and not hold up on that just because we're waiting on AG's opinion. And neither, I think, should we let the fact that we are working on some of the issues that they are dealing with satisfy us. There's no reason that we have to be the clearinghouse or the gatekeeper, it seems to me, that we ought to, very frankly, if there had not been some of this push out from outside of this department and this board, we may not have been as far down the road as we are in addressing some of those things, because it's not like we just began talking about them. These issues of more freedom and more freedom to innovate have been before us for the 12 years I've been here. We've been talking about it, and we've made remarkable progress lately, but it's late in coming. And I'm concerned about the thing that Randy mentioned, and that is that any delay means some kids are not getting the opportunity that these innovations might provide for them. And the longer, if we wait until all the uncertainties are resolved, we will never move forward. We'll never get any past where we are right now. So I think this is a bold, and I think it's an exciting opportunity for us to really set Kansas apart as doing something that is truly creative and student-focused, and in improving the lives of kids. So I'm very supportive of the work, and I hope that this board will make an expression of that same kind of support today. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I enjoyed reading both of your proposals. I guess they're proposals. And was interested to see the kinds of things. It sounds like I've got some kind of specific questions, so if you guys don't mind indulging me in some kind of specific questions. Because, Randy, it looks like you've got a lot of things already in place in your school district when I read through your proposal. And just a couple of questions. It looks like to me under your academic readiness section, you're pretty much using the ACT suite, which I think was part of your waiver.
Correct.
For academics, in addition to some Ames Web for K through 3.
Correct.
Okay, and then talk a little bit about, which I'm not real familiar with, under your academic behavior portion, you're going to use an ACT Engage, and then psychosocial attributes at 10-12. I'm just not familiar with that. Would you talk just a bit about that?
Absolutely, Kathy. I mean, if I could back up, we have currently used Ames Web, transitioning to the old state assessments, transitioning to ACT in 6th grade and beyond. I think where we're moving is kind of an unknown in that assessment arena. For the way we think about it is assessment at the end of a student's career, which is high school for us, needs to have specific meaning to where they're going after school. And I think, we've worked with Brad and Diane, and we have that, as part of our waiver going forward. And then we like to backward map that. I think, the work being done at KU may very well serve us in the future over ACT is going through change. We're going through change. And so what the assessments look like in the future, I'm not sure on that end. ACT Engage and Gallup organization has some through StrengthsFinder and through their work, is trying to measure those skills that are non-academic that lead to student success. Okay. And it's a self-assessment, and then there's a teacher-side assessment with that, Kathy, and it allows us to take a look at things like goal setting and determination and social activity and social connection that help us pinpoint areas where a student may be strong academically, but they have some psychosocial measures that may be not as strong as we try to help them get ready for life after high school. Does that help?
Yeah, and to kind of follow up with that, there's been a recent bill, Senate Bill 367, the Student Data Privacy Bill. It's got a section in there, it's Section 5, and it talks about some things you can and cannot do, and I'm kind of guessing that, and one of the things you have to do is have parents' signature, so I'm kind of guessing you're on top of that. And correct. I don't know if this particular piece will meet with that or not.
We've been concerned about that bill as it was originally written and talked about would it limit some of those factors from being accessed for us. But we not only have parents sign off, but they are involved in looking at the results of that in a private setting twice a year with our students and families, Kathy. But those behavior traits are important because we know that a student that scores 34 on the ACT and has a 4.0 is not always successful in life. Mm-hmm. They may well be, but there are other things. And we're trying to get a look at that total student to see if we can ascertain where the strengths and weaknesses are and then build upon those.
Okay, that sounds like that'll be very interesting. You also talked under the academic rigor piece that you kind of looked at your pre-AP, AP, and dual credit. Are there other ways that you're looking to kind of enhance the rigor in all of your classes?
Well, the rigor obviously starts with high standards, and that's the college and career standards, and that's the backbone of all the work that we do, are the college and career standards, and we've been extremely supportive of your efforts to pass those and to sustain those under some challenging times. With that, then what we want to match is if a student is engaged, we want them to engage in the highest academic level that they will need relative to where they're headed. So CTE classes would be within the CTE realm. Right. Crosses over a little bit in our workplace readiness. For us, our most advanced courses leading to college readiness are advanced placement courses or dual credit courses. And so if a student says, I'm planning to go to KU and major in engineering, then we want to make sure that plan includes calculus AB, calculus BC, an AP, even English class, because or dual credit English class, so that preparation is high. We also want to look at grades. Grades are a great determining factor as to future success, especially in rigorous courses. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then one last question.
Sure, Ken.
You listed some of the laws that you'd like to have, I guess exceptions maybe is what we describe it, but you didn't really say what it was. Like you listed food service, so I have no idea what it is there that you would want an exception to. Teacher licensure, I can kind of maybe guess what some of those would be, but then in-service and then the regents You listed that one also, and I had no idea what it is that you were kind of wanting to be able to.
Well, and again, I think I'll talk about today. This, I think, is a fluid movement as we discuss, things going forward. The regents are really taking a look at can eighth grade algebra count as a high school credit if it's taken in a middle school? I mean, things like that where you can't count that going forward for regents requirements if it's done in middle school. Now, if that middle school student leaves and goes to the high school, you can count that same algebra course. So things like that would be what we would want to take a look at as it relates to are there things that impede things going forward toward a plan of action. The other comes out of our food service director, and I have a very active KidLink team on healthy wellness with some physicians that keep pushing me and saying, we talked to the U.S. Department of Ed, and they tell us those are guidelines. And we talked to the State Department of Ed, and they tell us those are requirements. And so we just want to explore so that maybe we could have different food out for students, and how we feed them. And again, I'm just telling you what they relay to me as their frustration in trying to change some of the new requirements, and I know some of those have been lifted. So, Kathy, I hope that answered your question.
Okay, well, they were. I think there was a piece in here, and I can't remember, but ask what it is, what kind of exemptions did you want, and when you just listed the name of the law, and I don't know how as a K-12 person I could exempt something that the Regents does, that K-Board does. So that's what I had some questions about, because I didn't feel like it was clear for my purposes. Sure. Okay, I know I've got a couple for Concordia too, if you don't mind, Bev. Your items to exempt, you were pretty specific with licensure and recertification as far as mainly looked like CTE, and you gave your example, which was helpful for me to kind of see really what you're talking about, and I can certainly understand that. And then in accreditation, it sounds like your district uses the advanced ed, right, and has successfully used it and feels very comfortable with it.
Yes.
Okay. And new pathway creation, if I remember correctly, Cloud County kind of does the wind energy, and that's kind of something you were interested in there?
Yes, Cloud County Community College is one of the resources we have available, which in our discussions, we can't all afford to both be running programs, and how can we eliminate duplication and work together with each other's resources? There is not currently a career and tech ed approved pathway that includes alternative energies or wind energy, and we believe working with Cloud County with the program they have, we can back down and create a new pathway, and we've actually discussed that with Jay here, and he's anxious to work with us on that, where we've already gotten to the point maybe it shouldn't be specific wind energy, but wind energy is a component of alternative energies. So we've already started some discussions on that. But yes, we don't have a lot of resources. We can't match resources in some places. Sure. So what we've tried to do is identify what we do have as strengths and build on those strengths that we do have available for our students and build around those things. And yes, wind energy is one of them. Mm-hmm.
And then was offering credit for extracurricular activities. You kind of mentioned in your application a few athletic things, but how does that work with KSHA and their requirements?
I don't know with KSHA, but there is a statute, unless things change pretty fast, that said we can't award PE credit for extracurricular activities. So that was the example I used. I have an 8th grader who will participate in volleyball, basketball, and softball next year, and probably do summer conditioning. So 12 months out of the year, she'll be involved in physical activity, but I still have to require her to sit in we have separated health and PE to be a semester of health, a semester of PE. I have to put her in a PE class, even though she's getting her physical activity, where if my goal in the end is that they graduate with a year of college or industry recognized certification, instead of sitting in a PE class, she's doing all this other activity, can I get her in a more advanced course or something related to careers, something else, because she's already doing the physical activity. So that was kind of that. And the other example, somebody said, but it's not all about athletics. We know that. I could bring you some 4-H kids that have done public speaking since they were about 5, who could stand up here and speak better than me. Well, when they get to high school, we require them to take Speech 1. Is there a way in the system that we can work an exemption so they can move on with an advanced course, that they've met the competencies in that? So, there's kind of an academic example, not just an athletic example. And the goal is to, if kids already know how to do something, and actually I should back up. Concordia High School requires speech for graduation, so they have to sit in a speech class. Well, how about we put them in speech too? We don't have a process for that, and this would help us move those kids forward, get them in more advanced courses, more career and tech ed courses, and get them out of things they already know how to do. Otherwise, increase engagement of our students.
Well, and I just might, and I don't know the answer to the question about Keisha. I have no idea. I don't know if there's any conflict as far as credit bearing and participating in athletics, but I would think it'd be a good thing to check out before you kind of get into that, because I don't know the answer to that.
We had our athletic director involved, and I think they've looked into that.
Well, and I do just, that kind of concludes my real specific questions. I apologize for taking so much time. I may have some others, and I do commend your offer to collaborate, because I think that's a good thing, and to have a state board member and someone from the department, I think that would be good for communication purposes. So I'll be quiet.
Before I call on Jim McNeese, your speech example, don't you have the discretion now to set your course requirements so that the student can take advanced speech instead of beginning? That's not our decision.
Probably we do. We don't have that system in place, and that was one example.
But I think that's the ball's in your court on that one, I would think. But anyway, okay, Jim McNeese.
Thank you very much, and I promise not to take 45 minutes. 37. First of all, thank you very much for your leadership. In this, I enjoyed reading the applications. Randy, I enjoyed visiting with you. And Bev, I'm sorry I hadn't had a chance to be up in Concordia. It's fun to see people who are trying to lead and into a new future, and I want to applaud the things that you have already done in the system. A couple of comments more than questions. Number one, I'm all for innovation, for looking at things new and differently rather than being entrenched. And this is the way we do it, and that's the only way we can do it. I think, if anything, I've built my career on innovation. I've always said there's a better way to do it, but I've always respected the past and I'm tried to understand the rules, that I was going to violate. But at the same time, I learned in respecting the rules that there was a reason for them. And in this case, as much as I'm going to support you on one hand for your innovation and your direction that you want to go, and do everything I can to help you, learning the history of our state is also important, because in 1966, our Constitution changed, and it was implemented in 1969. And when the Constitution changed, a lot of people don't know this, it wasn't just about unifying school districts. It was about reining in the different boards that had and different committees that were out there running state education. At that time, prior to 1966, the governor did in fact appoint the board members, and the state board was appointed by the governor while the commissioner was elected. And nobody really knew who was in charge. We had like a textbook committee, and they ran all the textbooks, and we had the state board, and they were supposed to be in charge of, well, nobody really knew, because nobody knew who the superintendent was really answerable to. They were answerable to the people. So really what they did was they got rid of all the boards, and they got rid of all the peripheral committees and things that were out there, and that's why I found out we don't have a lot of committees on the state board. They're named, and they're very limited. So in the past, in the 60s when they did this, it was really about providing the state with clear, defined roles of leadership. So on one hand, I am looking forward to the Attorney General's opinion relative to the creation of a new board or a new group that you are, because you basically, thanks for coming here, but I didn't read anywhere where you really had to. I really appreciate your attitude, by the way, to include us, because that's really not clear in this. And that's kind of what the state fixed in '66. But we've had it so good for a long time, even though we bickered and fought a lot, that we kind of forget why we did this in 1966. And by the way, I think it proved, like by 64 or 65% of the voters at that time approved the Constitution, because we were kind of in disarray. We also had about 8,000 school districts. But getting to I'm looking forward to a clarity on that. Also, I wish that there had been an opportunity for us to respond as a board to the request for innovative schools last year, because I think you'd find a board that was a lot more agreeable. This board, if anything, I'd say it around the state, we've got a really good board. We've got a very far-reaching thinking board. We're putting a lot of pressure on the State Department of Education, and we've asked a lot of tough questions, about the very things that you're asking. So I look forward to working with you, in this process, and will provide any support I can. But on the other hand, I'm also a steward for the state of Kansas, and I need to be thinking, do we want to do this? Because, what's the next board we're going to have to deal with, the next committee that's going to have some authority? I trust, based on the meeting I had with Randy, especially, and Bev, I'm sure you're doing the same thing, that you have a board that's behind you, because you have done the legwork to create that sense of success, because you have been so successful. What happens next, though, is when others who are not quite as successful as you, who can then start to think about it in a different way, to gerrymander, to manipulate the system rather than participate with the system like you're doing, could do that. So there's some real issues on the legal side, though I've got to tell you clearly, I support you 100% on the side that you're trying to go, and will work with you to do whatever I can. And if the courts come back, or the Attorney General, comes back and says, this is the way this works, I'm with you, okay? If he says, you need to do it this way, I'm with you. If the status quo stays confused, I'm with you. Okay? So I can support, Ken, what you're saying about, moving forward and progressing. But at the same time, I'm going to move forward and be a good steward for the board and for the history of the board and the history of our state at the same time. And that sounds kind of a conflict, but to tell you the truth, my career was based on that, because I was innovative and pushed the limits on what we did, because a lot of the things that we were doing had good meaning maybe years ago, but really weren't meeting the needs now. And that's why Diane always hears this, I want to look at college and career ready as the basis of our graduation requirements, not just credits. And that's what you guys are doing. So even though some of the things scare me that you're talking about, I'm really excited to talk about them. I'm really excited to look at them. Thank you, and it was only 9 minutes. It seemed longer, I know, but it was only 9 minutes.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
Please, ma'am. What I would say to you is we know we've been given, this gives us a freedom, but I think what I want to reassure this board is that I say it all the time to my staff and my kids and the parents we work with our freedoms come responsibility. And Randy and I have had a few discussions about how vague a lot of things were with this. You take the application process itself, it required 4 parts to it, but it didn't give us a lot of direction to go. And I think that Randy won't disagree with me And I've been asked by one newspaper, well, are you going to do this and this and this? And I said, I don't know. That's not in our plan right now. And if I can't absolutely guarantee you that it has some impact on our goal, which is to prepare those kids when they graduate for that goal, then we're not going to talk about it. If it doesn't relate to that, it's not in line with it, then we don't do it. But I think we're in a position to develop some of the criteria, some of the rules of the game, because it's a little vague, and you have my assurance that I understand the responsibility that comes with this opportunity for freedoms.
Thank you.
Dina Horst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And many of my questions have already been asked. But there was one thing about in-service that wasn't answered, and I'm curious what component is in our regs that is restrictive with in-service.
And I would need for the details of that to go back to my staff that conduct the in-service. But it had to do with the way in which we can count in-service as it relates to contact hours and work with staff. And also, our staff, as all staff, give a lot of in-service that we coordinate on their own time in the summer. And so we're also looking at our agreement to allow some flexibility there, and maybe there's some areas within the state regulation that would allow some flexibility there. So that's kind of the way we wanted to look at it.
And I guess I have some of the same reservations that Mr. McNeese expressed, because I've been taught as a legislator to look at our Constitution. And so I've had concerns about the fact that this was set up by the legislature instead of, or at least not including us. It seemed like it was a run around the barn, so to speak. And that certainly concerns me. And I'm a new member of this group and probably have more years of experience across the street. But I also have concerns about whether, for example, the licensure piece was basically done across the street this year instead of bringing it to this body and allowing us to at least first make the changes. And I guess what I'm asking is, in the future, you want to work in coalition with us, but that responsibility also to me includes bringing the parts that are our responsibility, that are our rules and regs, giving us the chance to make the changes that are needed instead of putting them in statute. Because frankly, having spent a little bit of time trying to get the legislature to understand that what we wanted to do with rules and regs and what is already there are less restrictive than what they put in statute. And that's part of my concern, is that we have staff that knows what you're talking about. And revisors are just reacting to, hey, write a law to fix this. And unless you know what the details really are, and they're busy people, very busy, those revisors. So I'm sure they didn't even think about asking the department if they already had something in place that they could mimic. But I guess I'd like some response from you of how you will handle that kind of an issue that you discover that you have.
Well, thank you for those comments and the question. I think it is the difficult position that you are in when another body may challenge the constitutionality of this body. We're in the middle of that. We're hoping today to express to you, our hope is to bridge that. We certainly can't talk. We didn't vote on the law. We didn't pass the law. We're trying to act in good faith to implement with you. We know that the law may not have said very directly that you need to have involvement, but we're here to say, now that we have been named, we want your involvement. And so I hope that answers a bit of that. Certainly, by asking a state board member and someone from the State Department to serve with us, things that come up could easily maybe be said first, well, let's try that before we want to change the regulation. Let's see if it works with maybe Concordia or 2 or 3 school districts. And then if it looks like it does, as you're moving very rapidly on licensure, then maybe that has application to the broader field before we roll it out. So I see us, I know how we got here was a very ugly mess. Right? I think everyone would agree with that. But I hope if we go forward, that we go forward together in trying to use us as an opportunity to try some things that may or may not work to have a broader implication to the field. And I hope I answered your question.
So what you're really saying is that you would maybe come to us and ask us for permission to try that before you actually went out and did what, or were you just, do you see yourself as just trying it just to see if it works and then coming to us and saying it works, so please change the regs for everybody?
I think there's a dialogue that has to take place. Very specifically, that if we say we need to maybe take a look at licensure as it relates to, for example, I will be working all day Friday on a collaboration between McPherson College, Central Christian College, Hutchinson College, and our school district to plan a pre-K through 16 experience. It's kind of the next evolution of our C-Cubed initiative. And right off the bat, we've got some issues with licensure because we want to be able to use some college professors and they want to be able to use some of our teachers. And we have to vet those to make sure those are quality people, but we're going to run into some regulations. I'd like to be able to sit down, talk about that, say, can we move forward and see what are the implications if we do this, and then come back and then share those with you. I mean, we would be willing to share each month or every other month. We're obviously taking more time than today than you had anticipated, and we apologize for that. But this is we know again how we came here. You know, the law gave birth to the two of us to be here. Now we're saying the law is wide open and says there's a coalition board that goes forward and acts on their own. We're saying we need you to act together. We need that to act together. So,
And if I might, I will say that innovation to me is the lifeblood of what should be going on in education, and I fully support it. And that isn't my issue at all. I just, I guess being able to know what you are planning is important to me. And I fully support what both of you do. What Cindy Lane does is excellent as well. What I know of what she's accomplished. So all of that is very, very important for our future. I commend you for taking the time to go with the process, and even more for knowing that how important it is to involve this group of individuals. And I thank you for doing that, and also for involving our staff. So thank you again for that process, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Sally Cobble. Thank you. I too love innovation, but I too seem to have a problem of being rather blunt. And so I don't mean in the way I word things to be offensive at all. I am really asking these questions to be better myself. And because if you would ever be at a superintendent's meeting with me, you would find out that one thing I ask always is, what are the barriers that are keeping you from doing your job that I might be able to help you with? And so I think the innovative district piece is a way that we can find out what those barriers are. So in that, Randy, I'd just like to know, what was the barrier across this table that made you feel like that you needed to work with the legislature and Steve Abrams to develop an innovative district, instead of coming to us and us saying, we really like the idea of innovation and want to know where the barriers are that we could help you do what you're doing. What was the barrier that kept you from coming here first instead of going to the legislature? Because I think it's put us in a horrible situation.
thank you. I think that's an extremely fair question. I think in the initial discussions that I was asked to be involved with, there were many people in those initial discussions, including the State Department of Ed, Kansas Association of School Boards, and the legislature. And I think it was at a KSB.
I know where the meeting took place.
Yeah, meeting.
And I know who was in it.
And so it was a discussion about how we could take a look at trying to move forward, and it was never an intent on my part to try to pick sides one way or the other. It was just an attempt to move forward.
So why didn't you think to come to us before them?
I think I did come before you twice, and you awarded us a waiver from No Child.
But the idea of a committee never came before us.
Right.
So in trying to work together to do the best for the kids.
Sure.
Because I've got lots of questions. I don't really want to give up my authority that I was elected to do. And I feel like that bill is asking me to do that. So to move you forward and to get the barriers that we need to know as a board, if we could come up with a temporary committee of innovative schools that include who you want as part of that, but that you have to come to us for the waivers so we know where the barriers are. Could that be a temporary solution until we get the rulings of everything? So I've got a school district out in my district that I don't want to hold them up. And I asked the superintendent to send to me what he wanted to do, and he wouldn't send it to me. And I'm never going to see that. It's never going to help me know my job. It's never going to make me realize I know that we're moving slow on some things, but we have some barriers of our own. And you went to one of those barriers first. And so I guess where I'm at, I don't want to hold things up because I don't think things were done right, because that's not good for kids. But I'm willing to work and put a committee together and that we do this right. And we do it within, so we don't have to wait for an AG. We want that AG's opinion. But why can't we work together to move forward within the boundaries that we do have until we have? And so come to us, ask us to develop a committee, innovative. I'd be glad to make the two of you leaders of that committee. I'd be glad to put all of those districts, 8 districts on that committee. Bring them to us. Let us see what the barriers are. Let us have a chance to say, hey, we agree, and let's try some things. I liked your idea about the teacher. I'd be glad to waive some of those problems on a let's see basis. So I'm not against what you're wanting to do. I'm against procedure. I feel a little slapped in the face. I'm not going to give up what I was voted to do, but I'm really willing to work with you. And I know I said it very bluntly, and I apologize. It's the only way I know how to do things.
I appreciate your comments, and I think Bev does too. I will tell you, and I think I have a passion for helping students, and at the stage in my life that I'm at is the work that I hope to finish my career focused on those. I strongly believe it's best done in a public school system, and I worry that others don't have that belief, and I'm not talking necessarily around this table. And so, again, I think our role, if you think about the adult role, is trying to bridge that. And maybe we didn't do that very well initially, but I think that's our hope.
What about my idea, the alternative idea, until we can get some legal? Well, no, I'm asking you because then, this is the first time this group has heard my idea. So I don't know that I have 6 votes on that. Well, we'll go on. You don't have to answer that yet.
Janet Wall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I simply want to say that I agree. I'm anxious to hear the Attorney General's opinion. I've been on this board for many, many years. I'm one of the senior members. In the years that I've been on this board, I sincerely believe that every single board member has been here for nothing but to make sure all of our students exceed and excel and have a great life, are contributing citizens once they graduate from school. Even though we've had our disagreements over the years, I think that's our entire purpose. Secondly, in my entire history on this board, I do not recall one time, and I guess Diane's going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not recall one time that this board has refused a waiver if they felt, in fact, it would help school districts. And so I guess I just really, truly don't understand if something is really great and will help our kids, which I think that's what we all want, why it hasn't been brought to us, first of all, asked for as a waiver, or second of all, that we can change, because we've done a lot of changing, like in licensure, we've done a lot of changing in accreditation. I mean, we've done changes in everything almost since I've been on this board, all, in my opinion, that helped. So I guess my concern is why we weren't asked for waivers, for some of these issues. I mean, because Randy, we granted them to you when you came here. But Diane, do you ever recall us turning down a waiver?
Not in the past 6 years.
Okay, well, I don't remember in my entire history. And we've granted quite a few. So I guess that's my concern, because I'm being told you guys aren't for innovation. My goodness, I've dedicated my life, almost. I've had a longer one than most people, to nothing but making sure our kids receive an excellent education. And I think I'm kind of being told that's not what you're doing. And I guess I'm a little insulted. And you guys didn't do it. Don't misunderstand. I'm not directing this at you, please. But anyway, I guess that's my concern. Why, if this is good for all of you, why isn't it good for everyone? Because I think, as you said, and I do know what Kansas City, Kansas is doing. That's my district, and I am thrilled with what's going on in that district. And when they came to us with the waiver, I was the first one here leading the charge. I wanted that done. So that's just my concern, and I had to express that because I would hope and encourage all administrators, all school boards, all teachers, if they see something that does need to be changed, please contact one of us, contact the department. I've been contacted. Most people have no problem calling me, and I've received many, many calls over the years. Janet, we need to change this, this, or this. And I do follow through, and I believe every other board member does. So I would encourage that. Thank you.
Carolyn Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I thought I was the blunt one. I had a young person came into the office, and I was giving my opinion on something. He said, well, Ms. Campbell, you're so blunt. And I said, thank you very much. I don't want any doubt where I stand. Well, first of all, I respect both of you for all your years of dedicated service, and I really liked what Dr. Watson said a while ago about graduating our children with hope and with a future, because we know we have a lot of young people that are graduating that don't really have a focused future, and that's why I was very excited about reports of your innovation procedure that you presented. My concern personally, here comes the bluntness, is that we all know that public education is under attack. And it's very sad when we have people that are not focusing on our children and our educators. And I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about across the street and the things that have happened over there. And so I just have a lot of respect for innovation and what you're trying to do. And I hope that we can all work together and that things will work out in the end for the good of our children. Thank you.
Well, we've had a lot of comments, a lot of questions. Randy, I want to say to you, we sat down 3 or 4 years ago and talked about what you wanted to do. I was very supportive of that. You talked about your passion for education and students. I have that same passion. That's why I ran for this job 8 years ago. So I think there's so much that we all have that makes us all want to move forward in a progressive, innovative fashion. Bev, you talked about rules of the game and changing those rules. I think we are in a position as a board where we need to know what rules we can change and what we can't. So this was an information item on our agenda with the intent to have a vote next month. What I would like to do is to direct the staff here at the department to review the applications to be sure they meet the technical requirements of the statute. It's all so kind of mushy if you read the language that it's hard to know. And then I would like to ask our attorney to give us an opinion as to the constitutionality of the statute. So that is what I would like to direct the staff and the attorney to do. And then next month we will have answers to those questions so we know what rules of the game are and what we can change and what we need to do to move forward. Oh, Ken Wellard.
Madam Chair, I didn't realize I'd punched it, but I guess this must be a providential. I should speak. No, it just was mental telepathy, but that's fine. That's fine. But I'm glad to speak.
It was.
That's good. That's good.
It's gone now, if you don't want to say anything.
No, I do. It's I understand the reluctance and the apprehension about somehow losing our leadership role or our constitutional position in this discussion. But that, I think, should not be the guiding thought that directs our action here. And I know we're not going to take action today, but I'd just like to leave one thought before we leave this today. As we can see, in the environment in which we are living and working today, change is going to take place whether we like it or not. And some of it's going to be undesirable, and some of it's going to be good. I think rather than just staying in a position where we're waiting to see what happens to us, that we ought to take a leadership position in this. And we can do that by being a part, by taking the opportunity this law provides to be a part of this experiment. There's nobody here today and nothing in the law, as I read it, that's requiring us or asking us to make these kinds of waivers or exceptions for everyone. It's very limited. It's limited to a very small number of districts, and the districts who are going to get involved in it in view of this kind of controversy are much fewer than that. We only have 8 out of 28 that were possible to even submit applications. So I think that we ought to look for ways to get ahead of this game and lead it rather than to be behind it. If we would say the law is what it is, it's a bit murky, but we agree with this idea, and we want to support these schools in this lab project of innovation that doesn't require them to come and ask permission for everything they want to do, because in my mind, the ideas of asking and getting permission and innovation don't mix in the same bowl. They don't know, I'm guessing, what kinds of things they are going to encounter or what kinds of innovations they're going to make in the end. And we can't know what they are. And to require that we know and assess it and discuss it and vote on it a month later seems to me to be more restrictive than is necessary. So I'm just asking that we keep an open mind about it, because I view this not as a movement for the state or for every district to follow, but as simply a lab project that we could have initiated on our own, but we didn't. But it was initiated across the street, and we have the opportunity to either try to stand in the way of it or step in and be a part of it and try to make it work. So, thank you.
Ken, I don't believe our position is based on standing in the way of anything. I think many of us feel we need to know what the rules are, what we can legally waive and not waive. And there are some things that I think we legally cannot, but that's a discussion for another time. I see Steve Roberts has a comment. We have 5 minutes until time for lunch, and some of us are chomping at the bit for other reasons. So I'll let you make your comment quickly. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go on the record, Dr. Watson, Dr. Mortimer, that you have my full support. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I didn't mean to make your comment so brief.
Brevity is the essence of wit.
Okay, thank you, Steve. It is time for lunch. We have not had a break this morning, so I believe, do we have time for either of these?
I think we should do 9.
If that's the case, we need to take a 5-minute break.
Well, do you mind asking Matt Crable if he's available after lunch?
Matt, where are you? Are you available after lunch? No. No. Yes? No.
I didn't say anything. Other people said that. I can make it brief if I can go now, but if you need me to go later, I will.
Wait 5 minutes.
Could you make your comments starting at 12 o'clock and give us a short break?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and thank you, Randy and Bev. Thank you so much. We want to collaborate. This is too important not to do it right.
And thank you, and sincerely appreciate your comments today. And Jana, always appreciate the work that we've been able to do together over 25 years, I think, or longer, so thank you.
And I want to say thank you, too. And oftentimes at home I say, you know what, I can't change the past, but we can create the future, and we can work together on this and make it right for our kids in Kansas. Thank you.
Back in 3 minutes, people. It appears that our board members are in the room, so I would ask them to return to the table so Matt can do his update for us.
Great opportunity.
Well, we have Matt with us, ready and able to talk about science. Matt, it's good to see you again. It's been a while.
It has been a little bit. I'm honored to be back and give you a few updates about what we're doing with the implementation of these standards to support teachers and making the transition to our new Kansas science standards. I'm just going to give you an update on a particular project that we just started recently and highlight a few things that we're doing here in the next few weeks and months to support teachers. So what you see on the screen in front of you right now is a visual representation of the vision for science education of Kansas science teachers. I've worked with several hundred teachers in the last, almost a year now, directly in Kansas about how do we figure out what these mean for our students, and what is our vision for science education. And so I've had them answer a couple of questions, which is basically straight up, what is your vision for science education, and why is it important for students to learn science? And then I've taken sort of the answers from that and put them all into a text document. And I don't know if folks are familiar with Wordles or not, but what they do is they make a word map based on the frequency of the words that are used. And so what you see here, the bigger the word is, the more frequently it's used by the teachers who answered the surveys. And you see a lot in here about the two biggest words, of course, are science and students. And then you think things about world and problem solving and critical thinking and a lot of those pieces. We've continued to add to this, actually. I have it up on the website now, and I'm calling it the Kansas Vision for Science Education Project. And anybody who's a registered user of the website can also answer those two questions and contribute to this project to descriptively define what our vision is, rather than me telling them what we hope they do. This is Kansas science teachers telling us what their visions are for science education. Because at the bottom line of all of this, implementing new standards is about taking where we are and trying to move closer to our vision. And that's sort of what we're trying to do and trying to support teachers to make that happen. One interesting piece is I did this, and then I also did the same thing for the introduction to the K-12 framework for science education, which is sort of the research base for these standards that we've talked about many times before. And what you'll notice here is that there's a whole heck of a lot in common with our Kansas science teachers. And so the really cool thing that we are in the place where we are right now is our Kansas science teachers' vision for science education very much aligns with the vision in the framework and in our standards. And so we have this grand opportunity to how do we move our systems so they better support this type of education happening for our students. And that's sort of the task that I see with implementation, is simply how can we use the implementation of our new Kansas science standards to help us accomplish this vision. We've been doing a variety of things to this end. We've had a training of trainers event, so that we have now 40 people who are elementary, middle, high school, post-secondary, informal science educators in Kansas who's received some training that they can now help increase my capacity to help support teachers. I've been going out individually to a lot of teachers and talking with other folks as they go out, but we're trying to increase the capacity of support for those teachers in the classroom. Those people will also help us there'll be a strand in the summer academies this summer that will be science specific. So those people will help us facilitate those sessions in the summer to really sort of find ways to support teachers in the classroom as they transition to the new science standards. So those are sort of few of the things that we've got going on, but there also is a lot of effort around continuing to bring together the people that were a part of the process. So bringing together business and industry folks into the conversation, bringing together informal science educators, of course all the classroom educators and post-secondary. We've got a lot of great things happening. One of the cool benefits of having those people involved throughout the process is we have a lot of our post-secondary folks in science education who are continuing to push and provide support. I know that Paul Adams at Fort Hays State University has a grant to help out in western Kansas with science education at the elementary level. I know that Gary Anderson at Mid-American Nazarene has a grant that they're going to do a summer academy this summer to support teachers in their area in making this transition. And so we have a lot of folks who have been engaged at a variety of different levels who are continuing to provide support and provide new ways, and we're all talking to each other about how we can do this together so that we can move folks toward that vision. So it's really exciting, and we're having, there's lots of fun little hurdles that get in our way, and as we sort of figure out how do we get to that vision. But it's been a really good year. We're making lots of progress. There's still lots of room to grow. We're really encouraging districts to take their time to do this right and transition in a way that really fundamentally moves them toward that vision and doesn't just shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic. So we're excited about what's going on, and we have lots of good things coming up. So that's my update. Thank you very much for allowing me to come back and share a little bit about the cool things that are happening.
I have a question, and then Dina, I'll call on you. Our concern, I know, before these standards were even approved, was elementary science and how it was kind of falling by the wayside in many of our schools. Is there a concerted effort to move forward and encourage science at the elementary level? What initiatives are taking place that way?
Sure. I mentioned the one that Paul Adams is coordinating. He's working with, I'm not sure how many districts, but quite a number of districts in western Kansas to provide ongoing support in summers and throughout the year to do that. Other than that, there's not necessarily an explicit piece that I'm aware of, other than I know that all those people are pushing on it. When I go out and work with districts and have them sort of think about what their critical issues are in their districts and what are the biggest, most significant points in their district, by their own estimation, that they can do to move their system forward. That's a topic that comes up regularly. And one of the ways that we've talked about addressing that is it's really important to have a K-12 leadership team within your district so those conversations are happening internally. And so that's on the radar for a lot of districts and a thing that they want to work on. We don't have a particular piece that we're providing, although we do have, for example, in the summer academies, there is, although there's an integrated strand for teachers who want to get more information about math and English and science and the history, social studies, government. There's also some science-specific strands for folks at the elementary level that really want some extra help in science, and they'll get more intensive science support through those 3 days.
I know we had discussed regional groups in the state kind of taking leadership and moving this initiative forward. Has that materialized, or is it still a work in progress?
It's still a work in progress. From some of those conversations, we've had a lot of local groups. The easiest, quickest example in my mind right now is in Manhattan, where they've really started locally doing sort of an outreach of the process. And what we've done so far is they really have I'm not sure it's monthly, but every couple of months they have a group that gets together, that pulls together for their district the business and industry, the folks from post-secondary, the informal science educators, and they're having conversations locally. And then they've been also talking with other districts to get similar things happening. So they've been not only sort of pushing that envelope, but they also have been willing to help other folks make that happen. And we're still working on what that regional conversation looks like, but it's just working slowly.
Okay, thanks. Dina Horst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned hurdles that you were experiencing. Could you be more specific?
Sure, and they're all district specific. One of the things that as they sort of lay out their plan, there's issues in districts in terms of their course sequencing, for example, at middle school and high school, and thinking about how do we address these grade banded standards, because 6, 8, and 9, 12 are grade banded, they're not grade specific. So there's sometimes challenges there around master scheduling or teacher licensure in a place, or what equipment they have in their building, just because they're sort of thinking carefully about what they're doing and why they're doing it. So sometimes those things, and sometimes the hurdle is just simply it's change, and change isn't always easy.
So the hurdle isn't around this table, it's actually in the field.
Right. I think there, as one of the things that as we work with this district, we're really asking them to do is figure out what you think are the hurdles. As you sort of cast this vision of what your science education is, and then you think about what are we doing and how do we get there, sort of identifying that. And I've certainly encouraged folks in that conversation of, if there's things that is the purview of this board, for example, then bring it to the board. If there's things that are purview of your local school board, where actually I think a lot of the issues that have been brought to my attention are more local conversations, then make sure that you're having that conversation with your community about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Make sure you're talking to your local school board and having those conversations. Don't get shut down by the hurdles.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other questions for Matt? That's the advantage to presenting right before lunch. Not a lot of questions. Thank you, Matt. We look
Thank you all
forward to
very much.
having you come back and tell us more what's developing down the road.
Great, I look forward
Thanks.
to it. Thank you.
Bye. And we will recess for lunch.
Janet,
Oh.
are we going to move this to
Oh,
after
do we need,
lunch then?
yeah, I just assumed that. Do we need to check on it?
Brad?
Brad, are you available after lunch?
I am. You have CPTE is also here in the team that I can put this in. Let me check with.
Okay.
CETE, Mary Ann is here. Terry, yeah, from KU.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. We will hear about the assessment update at 1:30 when we resume.